Good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all here tonight. I'm Margaret Miller. Tonight, we celebrate the opening of the exhibition, Brian Maguire, Grande Illusion, The Grande Illusion. The exhibition was curated by Barbara Dawson, director, and Michael Dempsey, head of exhibitions at the Hugh Lane Gallery in Dublin, Ireland. Cam's exhibition was adapted from the original exhibition by Curator-at-Large Christian Viveros-Fauné, who serves as moderator for the panel tonight. He is well established as a writer and curator, and we have been working together since 2018. He has curated significant exhibitions and introduced exceptional global artists like Brian Maguire to Cam and Graphic Studio. I was not able to visit the Hugh Lane Gallery to see this exhibition, but Christian Viveros-Fauné, along with Gary Schmidt, our exhibitions designer, and Jen Miller, curator of education, traveled to Dublin to see the exhibition and plan for its showing here. I know the importance of the Hugh Lane Gallery from a trip I took with the Tampa Chamber of Commerce in 2015. I organized the the cultural component of the visit to Dublin. I actually think I can see this better without my glasses, yes. Brian Maguire is a major cultural figure in Ireland. His paintings are global in scope, and the exhibition spans 2 decades of his work. The paintings are at once stunningly beautiful and represent projects undertaken between 2007 and 2024 in Mexico, the Mediterranean, Syria, Sudan, the Amazon, Arizona, and Brazil. Brian explores themes like migration, economic inequality, the drug and gun trades, sexual violence, and ongoing damage to the environment. He embeds himself in these communities. The subjects of the painting are at once hopeful and bring the injustices of the world, man's inhumanity to man, to our attention. I want to recognize a few people who have come to Tampa for Brian Maguire's exhibition. Fergus McCaffrey, who I don't think is here yet, but arriving tonight, is his gallerist in New York. Mark Mc Loughlin, who wears a lot of hats, producer, writer, director, cinematographer, and editor. He is the director of the documentary on Brian Maguire. You will see it in the exhibition and a clip of it at the start of the conversation tonight. Dara Yowish, producer, is here, and she and Mark Mc Loughlin have worked together as director and producer on a number of films. This is a tough name. These are German names. I looked them up. I Googled them. How do you pronounce them? So Christian Gruca and his wife, Julia, are lenders to the exhibition. It takes an amazing and talented staff to make an exhibition of this magnitude a success. Thank you goes to my co-director, Christina Keogh, Gary Schmidt, already mentioned as exhibition designer, Eric Jonas, chief preparator and director of the Corporate Partnership Program, Alejandro Gomez, preparator, Madison Andrews, preparator, David Waterman, chief of security, Jen Miller, curator of education, Amy Allison, program assistant, Don Fuller, curator of new media and technology advisor, Mackenzie Farrell, designer, Shannon Annis, curator of the collection and registrar, Mark Fredericks, curator, researcher, and manager of special projects. Sponsors of this exhibition include Chris Garvin, who's here tonight, Dean of the College of Design, Art, and Performance, Culture Ireland, Ron Crisaldi, who's not with us tonight, but he's a lawyer with a law firm in town, Shoemaker Loop, and Stanton Storr, who is here tonight with his Embrace the Arts Foundation, was one of the sponsors. So it is now my pleasure to introduce to you Christian Viveros-Fauné, our moderator for the evening.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you guys very much for being here. It's a great turnout for Brian and Mark and for Brian's exhibition. We're gonna start this conversation in a fairly unusual way because we're gonna start with a trailer for a movie that well is in the galleries. So actually, before I say anything more, I think we'll just roll. But before I do, we're all grown-ups here, obviously, but I do want to tell the audience that this material contains depictions of graphic violence that some folks may find disturbing. So, roll.
Like, imagine me getting locked up now and him coming back into a prison to visit me. The shame of it alone, the shame, in my word, that's shameful.
And the way he goes around the world, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he keeps going. It's beyond my comprehension. And when I sit here and I write a few songs, he goes to the ends of the earth, puts himself into physical danger to get the information he needs to paint these works.
To accuse me of, you know, making a living by picking at the bones of the poor, you can do it. But having done it, what are you going to achieve? You're going to silence me and all that might think like me. You're going to create a silence around injustice.
I think with Brian you have this extraordinary intelligence and experience which informs this great humanity that is Brian, is the essence, the crudity of the artist.
The title of the show, Scenes of Absence, came from the staff in this museum who rightly could see the connection between painting the dead, who are absent, and the cities, who are destroyed and thereby absent.
But Brian came in here, and I saw him on his second trip. And then I saw him come in here on following trips. And I realized this guy was not just coming in here for a quick visit. He had kind of a reckless abandonment and a true, deep compassion where he risked himself to find out as much as he could about the people here in our community.
When I worked here, it was quite dangerous. The military were patrolling the streets in the same equipment as the British Army used in the 70s in Belfast. I had one job to do, which was to remember the girl and make a picture and give it to the family. The second job I had to do was to take that picture and show it in European capitals so that the Mexican government would hear. And indeed, we did it in the European Parliament in 2012.
Hello.
These mothers are monumental in their they've never hidden from the tragedies in their lives. They have, on a daily basis, forced themselves into reliving as they demand justice. And they have stood foursquare with their dead, and they've never let them go. For me, it's a huge thing.
Me gusta mucho su trabajo en el gran formato, pero se ve que es un dibujante muy humano, ¿verdad? Capta expresiones y capta a la persona, no lo retrata como si fuera fotografía. Me gusta mucho esta exposición, la verdad.
When I started talking to the Rubens Centre, I said, look, fine, but I would be more interested in putting a show in that was on both sides, simultaneous, different work, same show. It's a tiny gesture against the border.
And the exhibition we're standing in here tonight, Scenes of Absence, is actually one side of an exhibition that extends across the border and between the two cities. We have a lot of special people present here tonight, and I'd like to recognize just a few of them. First of all is the artist Brian Maguire. And if we could just give Brian a round of applause, please.
As regards the effect of the work that I did here, the evidence of its success or failure was in the museum on the night before the opening, when the families came. You know, it's not for me to say, it's for them. And they did say it. Those mountains, they're absolutely beautiful. But the reason we're coming here is not the beauty of the hills. But we're traveling from El Paso through New Mexico into Arizona. We've just crossed into Arizona. I'm interested in making some work which records these deaths.
The van they were riding in got the attention of the Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol started chasing the van, and they flipped over here many times.
And they died in the crash.
Yeah, they died here in the crash, and this thing never made the news. This thing never made the newspapers, the television. But these people had names. We know their names. They had families. They had plans. They had dreams. They had people who loved them. You know, they were trying to improve their lives in some way. They were looking for crumbles of the American dream. You know,
700 in the last 5 years.
That's almost like like an airplane going down every year.
My work comes from anger, from a sense of wanting to take revenge. The victims of injustice require their stories to be told. They can't tell them, they're gone. So those of us who are around, that's our job.
So this is footage from a brand new, I think it's brand new RTE documentary that Mark directed and Dara edited and produced, which I think hit the airwaves when, Mark?
Just a couple of months ago.
A couple of months ago. Yeah. But before we sort of like kick off on this conversation, I want to sort of, I want to prime it by underscoring maybe three questions, right? Which for me are really sort of important in taking on board Brian's work, but also the film that again is playing inside one of the galleries over just a few steps away over at camp. One is, what do we look at when we look at depictions of human suffering? When faced with images that stir us to feel and think, what do we really see? And not really lastly, but also, you know, how does certain media, painting in the case of Brian, film in your case, Mark, negotiate these sort of age-old realities, right? I sort of want you guys to sort of process those questions, those ideas while we talk, but also when you visit the exhibition. Because I think that those are questions that ultimately Brian's work really sort of like makes us confront. They're not clearly sort of photorealistic depictions of things, right? Of these kinds of events. They are suggestions. They're attempts to begin conversations with individuals in audiences and in audiences writ large. Anyway, let me just extend just a very quick applause to both of these gentlemen here. It's wonderful for me. I'm quite proud that they're here. Brian and I have been working together since 2011. He was a fundamental part of a biennial I did in Dublin, Ireland. That almost took about 5 years off my life. But one of the things that really sort of strengthened me to push on with that project was actually meeting Brian, who was tremendously generous and you know helped the entire thing sort of go as well as it did. We really are fortunate to have these two gentlemen here. I do want to mention the title of the film, right? Which is, Mark?
The Life of Brian Maguire in brackets.
In brackets, correct. Right?
Very
so,
important.
you know, for the Gen Zers, and I wonder how many Gen Zers we lost with that with that reference, because it's Monty Python, The Life of Brian, which is a 1979 film. So, so you know, it's about Brian's process, which is, as I think you can tell, is more than just about being in the studio. It's about being in the studio, of course, but it's about being out in the world. Margaret mentioned the word embed, right? As in what war journalists do. And in a significant way, that's what Brian does with his work. He goes to what are routinely called, trouble spots, right? Conflict zones, and embeds himself with communities, and then works with them, and then brings back, I don't know, I don't think you think of them as souvenirs, but I think in a really loving way, maybe they are, you know. And then, you know, at least on 2 occasions, and now a third, and you guys will talk about this in a minute, Mark and Brian have worked together to put these stories into film. So let's just start with, you guys have been on a barn burner tour this last week, and you're going on more of this the week upcoming. Where have you been? What have you been doing, both of you?
We were in
Don't make me decide for you.
Don't jump. We screened in the Irish Embassy in Washington, D.C. 2 nights ago. And
Correction. New York University, sponsored by Irish Embassy.
Sponsored by the Irish Embassy. Facilitated and sponsored by the Irish Embassy. Thank you. We after this, we're going to Tucson in Arizona, which is the end point of the film, where we did a lot of work actually finding the locations of bodies of people who had crossed. It was a kind of an end point of the story, in a way that they crossed the wall and on the verge of the American dream, but found they still maybe had 10 to 15 days to walk, and many died en route and were unidentified. So we worked with a lot of people, and it took a lot of time to get access to all of the records from the chief medical officer, who was fantastic in Tucson. So we're going from there then to El Paso. You've seen some shots here in the trailer from El Paso, where Brian had 2 exhibitions, and where myself and Brian probably started all this over 10 years ago, working with families of the mothers of the femicide victims in Ciudad Juarez. So that's for this.
And that's over like 2 films, because I think this film represents the second time you worked together, correct? Or am I off there?
He's actually in, I think you're in 3, are you, together now?
Well, yeah, I think you're in 3 now, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But like the first one is what's the title? Blood Rising,
correct? First one is called Blood Rising,
right.
And that was based on the families, the work Brian did with families of the femicide victims.
The idea of, first of all, Mark had a quality of integrity. Not every.
Wait, stop. Can everyone hear him?
Sorry, Marx has a quality
Thank
of
you.
integrity. I hate saying it in front of him, but it's true. Not every filmmaker has, and indeed I had one before, but we had to release him from his contract. And we proceeded with Mark. The reason for me is that painting cannot speak to you verbally. There's no way the mothers could tell their stories through images of their daughters. It's not completely, but it was so much more comprehensive to work with a filmmaker. And that's why why I joined the team.
Well, but who sought out who? I'm curious because I don't know. Mark, did you seek Brian out, or was it the other way around, or was there some combo there?
It was actually a curator in Ireland, a mutual friend of both of ours, who called me and
Finally, a curator that's useful. Go on.
and she said, "Are you aware of what Maguire is doing down in Mexico?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, it's right up your street." So she explained, and I was immediately guzzling information. I was on the phone, and I spent months researching and totally embedded my head and mind in the idea, and that was the dawning of it.
Interestingly enough, my recollection is that careers are built through the support of other individuals. And his conversations with the Irish Museum of Modern Art resulted in my being offered the Aleppo show.
Ah, okay.
But I know, he doesn't tell it, but I know it. I was behind the scenes. Mark was working away on my behalf. Again, I'm sorry to have to say this.
Well, let's, now that we've just mentioned Blood Rising again, the film previous to this, and the fact that you guys were down in Juarez, let's hear what you were doing down in Juarez, if you can, sort of like with some order. First of all, whose idea was this?
I was there first.
Yeah, fine, Grant,
Thank
good,
you.
okay. But, okay, so it's your idea, you get in touch with Mr. McLaughlin.
No, I was in Juarez. Then Mark, it was suggested by the director of a venue which was showing the Mexican work, that we make a film together.
Yeah, but let me start from the beginning. Why Juarez?
Well, Juarez, I read the Juarez story when I was in Idaho, a book by two Mexican journalists, female, whose names have disappeared from my writing.
Diana Washington.
No, not Diana.
Okay.
But I read the story, and the story held all the elements that I understood the world attacks its citizens with. The victims in this story were brown, they were young, they were female, they had just had a first education, they were factory workers. Everything in this brought me to it. I came to it because of class politics, not sexual politics, gender politics. But that's why I went.
Right, and at the time, Juarez was the murder capital of the world, right? And there was this epidemic of femicides, right? Of these women, many of them maquiladora workers, right? Working in American-owned companies who would just go missing.
All of them poor.
Right.
Everyone.
So you guys go down there. And how long do you spend down there, and whom with?
Okay. Well, the first thing I did was I went to Houston, where I knew some people. And the director and owner of the Station Museum, who has since died and whose name I forget. I just can't bring it up, but it's easy found. He had held an exhibition from Juarez, from artists dealing with it. And he pointed me to Susan Blum, a Mexican artist. So I was visiting a print workshop there, owned by friends. And I was only there 10 minutes, and who walks in the door but Susan Plum? When you get that kind of response, you know you're on the right track. I talked to her, I asked her would she help me. She invited me to what is commonly known as Stitch and Bitch. And whatever I did it okay. She gave me a number of Maricela Ortez. I phoned Maricela. Maricela made an agreement to meet in El Paso. She said, okay, you teach the orphans of the femicide women art, and I'll introduce you to their families. Now there is a deal made in heaven. It meant that after I had completed the first workshop, children are children, it's just wonderful to work with them. When I went to the house, the first house the following day, the mother was deeply depressed, but her daughter was there who I'd been with the night before in the Ramada Hotel where we did the workshop. And it was okay. You know, it was the spirit of the working with the kids carried into the day after, and I managed to survive that first day. That's the period that occurred before Mark arrived, so I'll hand over to him now. Okay.
Yeah, well, I guess just to say, Maricela Ortiz, she runs an organization called Nuestras Hijas de Regreso a Casa, May Our Daughters Return Home. So she was one of the leading lights representing the femicide victims, and herself received many death threats and ultimately actually had to leave Juarez for her own safety.
Sorry, this is 2010, 2012?
2011 or so,
Okay.
yeah.
28, I
Okay,
suppose.
okay.
Well, I guess from a filmmaking perspective, when I kind of came in on the story, it was later in the day, but it was to try and make a cohesive narrative, but also to be very conscious. I was very curious as a male going into such a story of trying to actually understand the levels of violence that other males, predominantly in this case, go to. And I mean, we experience some of the most, off the scale, unimaginable levels of violence. But I was also very careful. I didn't want to make a film, as an outsider, coming into a situation, you have to be really careful, you have to be respectful, you have to build long and sustainable relationships, but also how I would represent Brian. For me, Brian was a mediator between the stories, who was carrying and being trusted and chosen to represent the stories. And that was important, rather than somebody who was coming from a kind of a, this is my impression and this is what should be done.
Do you remember Lucia Castro?
I do indeed.
Yeah, Lucia Castro was the founder of the first. Lucia Castro founded the first women's refuge in Mexico, in Chihuahua. And the day we were there, many things happened, but one thing that was important was she said, look, she could speak about the injustice against women all day long, and the Mexican government wouldn't listen to her. But if we took this story and brought it to the capitals of Europe, they would then listen. And so we got our job from her. She was the most clear Now she's passed on now, but
Yeah, and
yeah.
we brought it to the European Parliament, and we brought it to many other.
After the European Parliament, it was front page on the Pharma in Mexico City.
Which is a tremendously important thing when essentially art sort of, I always find it really important when, you know, an art action, Miguel Luciano, for example, doing flying kites of undocumented folks, of dreamers, you know, over the National Mall in Washington, D.C., makes it onto the front page of the Washington Post. What you've just described is a moment in which, you know, you actually hit a certain sweet spot informationally, right? And you sort of transcend the gallery, you transcend the museum, you transcend the studio, you transcend the expectations of what art is supposed to do, right? So you guys are basically twinning these two forms of storytelling, right? Filmic, right, with language and people speaking, and the actual sort of subjects of the film speaking, and you making the paintings. You've long, Brian, essentially put together these kinds of, well, in this case, workshops, right? There is sometimes an exchange. What did that exchange look like in Juarez? And then I want to rewind back to talk about like maybe the first instances of you doing this, but let's start with Juarez.
The exchanges, the rule is very simple. No matter how I'd like to put it, I am a wealthy person stepping into a colonia. You know, it might feel like that on my side, but it looks like that on the other side. So you take nothing, absolutely nothing. If I want to photograph the paint, I photograph the photograph. That you take nothing. You take your experience, okay, fine, but you don't take any stuff from the house you're in.
Do you give them anything?
Yes, you bring back the painting of the daughter, and you know, I've known from where it's been placed. I remember one man, the one where we had a father in the house. I had gone back later for some reason or other. I was back at the house, and the small painting was in the glass case, you know, which is the family's tabernacle. We all have one, you know. So I know, generally speaking, that the work was respected.
Well, you've been doing that kind of exchange, time and actual painting.
Yeah.
Time, your training, your teaching for their time, their energy, their stories, right? For some time now. And I think it's fair to say you probably started in Ireland.
Yeah,
doing that.
Yeah.
There's an image of a fellow that comes up in the trailer, you know, I think in the first minute, in the first 45 seconds, a guy named Eddie Cahill. There you go. So Eddie Cahill's a really interesting dude.
Yeah.
Do you care to elaborate on what Eddie's thing is?
There was a film made by Borman called
John Borman,
called The General, which you may enjoy. It depicts the largest art robbery in Europe.
You should all see it. It's a fantastic film.
Eddie was the General's right-hand man.
He stole Goya's, he stole Vermeer, stuff like that. And his brother was just this
terrible devil. But anyhow, to cut a long story short, I met Eddie when he was serving time. I think he had a 8-year sentence, which would commute to a 5. The previous 8 he had spent in the gym. He couldn't face that again. And he was looking for something to do, and he was attracted to this idea of me anyway, because in the film he describes how he thought I was a prisoner and he couldn't understand. And anyway, we got close, and he started producing the most wonderful drawings. that I have a suite of drawings which described the depression of imprisonment. Anyway, I was really taken by his work. He kept going. He was released. He kept going when he came out. He established a studio. He has been moderately successful. Interestingly enough, the government that paid me to teach him have yet to purchase one of his works. Now he's been painting for 25 or 30 years, and people have bought them, but not the government. So.
Well, and as a matter of fact, when Gary and Jen and I basically went to visit you, went to see the show at the Hugh Lane, there was an article, I think a day or maybe a couple of days before, that was, I don't know if it was the Irish Times or not, but about one of Eddie's shows, which led me to recognize him as I was walking in the door of the Hugh Lane gallery, because he was outside smoking a butt. But in any event, you know, a real character and now a painter.
Can I say that I mean, it's not necessary to say this, but just in case, from the day he took the pen in his hand, pencil, he has never transgressed against laws of man or God, you know, from that day. And indeed, on one occasion, when 2 young officers were attacked by 2 fellas who were expected to attack the senior man. The senior man didn't walk down at that moment. So they attacked with steel rods this man. The person who came in to help the officer was Eddie. And, you know, that is an example of his fearlessness, not from the blows, but from the taboo that he was breaking.
What year is that, more or less, when you were working in the prison system?
I left the prison system in 2010, was it? Yeah, I was completely out. I managed a third level course from 85 to 2010.
And but wait, and you were also, Brian was also the director of the National College of Art.
It's very easy. Easy to get a promotion around here.
Are these moments overlapping, or am I?
No. Yes, they are. I was the dean of the Faculty of Fine Art.
Correct. Okay. Right. Okay, but okay. So you stop working in the prison. At some point, you start working. You stop working at NCAT, but then you have this. You go. I'm going to put it in a silly way. You go global. That is.
Yeah, I've worked in prisons all over Europe on a research capacity, and I've worked in prisons in South America and North America.
And I'm thinking specifically of the Sao Paulo Biennial project.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. And that's more or less in 2004.
Okay, Sao Paulo Biennial. I was there, and I heard that there was 50,000 Europeans go to the Sao Paulo Biennial, and incidentally, they didn't go that year.
Well, incidentally, it's going on right now. It opened yesterday.
But there's 2 million people from Sao Paulo go, so I decided to make my work with the 2 million rather than the others. So I began to nose around as to, from what I knew, I knew a priest who worked in a favela. And I got working with him, and with children, and again with art and children. And then another man got me into Caradaroo prison, which 6 years previously, but somewhere between 110 and 400 men were shot dead by a police unit inside the jail.
Yeah, another movie, by the way, Carandira, if anyone cares to look at it.
It's a very good, I think that movie's based on a very good doctor's book.
Yeah.
The doctor of the place. So I decided I would go into Pavilion 9. I would find people who had survived this attack and people who had witnessed it. And they would tell me about it, and that I would present it in the Biennale. And I did that. And indeed, one of the paintings upstairs, the Aleppo painting, in tone, it's a bit like what I did, you know. So what else did I do? I did one other project, which was called 12 Days from Dario Popular. The newspapers, like all newspapers, love nothing better than to print pictures of criminals. The fact that they haven't really gone before a judge yet is irrelevant. But they're more honest in Brazil. They call it the police pages. There's 3 of them. And so every day I went and bought the paper, couldn't speak the language, but I bought the paper, found a guy that I thought I knew. Because of all the years in prison, you get to recognize some faces. Anyway, looking at anyhow, I made drawings of these, and I made very beautiful drawings. Drawings were exquisite. That was the idea, to change the relationship of the guy.
You once told me that you consider yourself to be a painter of invisible people.
Yeah. All these people were disappearing. They're all going. Everybody I painted wasn't wanted, with the exception of 3 or 4 who paid me. But most people I painted are, if they're not disappeared yet, they will be.
And go on.
No, I was just going to add, there was a kind of an interesting dichotomy there in a way of, we organized a workshop in the prison in Juarez. See you at Juarez. It took us a long time to actually get permission to get in there, but
that's in the film, actually.
Yeah, it's in the film. But those 3 hours were quite amazing in a way, because firstly, the attention was just absolutely rock solid, apart from one brief incident where a gang leader came in and everything stopped, but that kind of passed quickly. But it was amazing to see. I mean, these were all people who were, you know, guilty as hell for whatever crimes they were in for, but it was amazing to see absolute hunger and a determination to do something of value and to do something that enriched. And you could see just the contentment, the focus, the pride towards the end, and some of the drawings and things that were achieved in that short period of time. It was very revealing, I have to say.
I'm going to throw another quote at you from a friend of yours, Ed Boulami, who's a war correspondent.
Yeah.
And he said, actually, he quotes you as saying the following about the way you work. I decided, he says, you said, that I couldn't make a painting without something of the real world being in or part of some aspect of the subject. You have to be part of the story. This is the method to the projects I do. And if you work that way, it can take 10 years to complete a project. It takes a long time to belong somewhere enough to paint it. That's a fascinating idea.
It's all true. Yeah. I said that.
Yeah. Apparently you did, because it was in the paper and then in a catalog. But yeah, that's in the sum the way you work.
It was a surprise to me, the 10-year thing, but yeah, it does take that length of time. Not that I turn my back on any project or any one, but it takes around 10 years to complete a work.
Let me ask you your source material, about your source material for images. I think it's fair to say a lot of your images basically are originally come from photographs, correct?
Yeah. We were talking.
What kind of photographs is what I'm interested in figuring out.
There's 2 kinds. There's more than 2. There's the photographs I take myself.
Right.
Okay, that's an easy one. There's the photographs I might steal. It's not breaking an entry, but it's just cutting them out of the paper. And then there's photographs that I buy from a newspaper or I'm given.
You are very honest. Do you buy photographs from a newspaper?
Yeah. Karen Daru, I bought all those papers. Yeah, they did me good though. They really gave me a low level price. Yeah, I was in, it's a funny story, but I was in Syria. I was on a kind of a mission, and we had New York Times journalist with us. And we were being joined by a photographer from Spain, Sebastian, God knows what, young fellow, very bright man. Anyway, I decided when we met at breakfast that I might as well show Sebastian what I do. I, on the phone, picked out one picture. I showed it to him that I'd made about 4 or 5 years ago. It was his photograph. How could it be?
And then his lawyer called you.
No, I'm an honest man. I had written twice to him for permission. He didn't answer. I said, why didn't you answer? He said, I was just happy that somebody was interested in what I'd done.
Somebody should tell Richard Prince that that's possible.
I do watch American law carefully as it develops on this
I think
issue.
That's actually quite smart. Listen to me. There are a couple of art world terms, social practice and socially engaged art, that describe what you do, or part of what you do. But I don't think I've ever heard you use either. Well, how come? I mean, is there something about the nomenclature that doesn't sort of like encompass what you're doing, or
you're kind of smart?
I love being kind of smart.
You know, those terms don't belong anywhere in my work. They belong in your work. God love you. No, seriously. When am I going to use those terms in a favela or anywhere?
Or with Eddie Cahill, who's actually quite sophisticated.
Yeah, we also have other languages that aren't used. And, you know, there are all kinds of languages in the world. I don't get too upset about it. I mean, when I taught art, when I taught in the university, I was more interested in the learning that occurred, and I used placement. So I managed to put students in nightclubs in South America and in God knows where else, in Africa, and in, you know, mental health situations in Dublin. And in all cases asked them to give something to this situation, and then come back to school and tell us through art what you saw. So I didn't need terms for such practical teaching.
I mean, I think that's a fantastic answer. There was somebody you worked with, and at the risk of going over, I do want to mention, over in time, I do want to mention this particular individual because he shows up in the film. And Dr.
Hess.
Greg Hess.
Greg Hess, right?
Yeah.
Who you guys visited in 2019.
Yeah.
He is the chief medical examiner for Pima County, Tucson,
Yeah.
right, in Arizona. And he gives you what he calls 21 years of record keeping, by which he means 3,300 visual records of migrant lives lost in crossing the southern border, right? These are people who just didn't make it. They died in the Sonoran Desert.
It's like
How did that happen?
Woody Guthrie's at the beginning of that.
Yeah.
All they will call them are deportees.
Yeah.
I mean, we learned that as we grew up.
Get closer to the mic because I want everybody to hear this.
Woody Guthrie's song, Deportees, is the beginning of this project. You know, certainly my country has given deportees to its, I mean, that is, all our lives we've left.
Certainly to America, yes.
Yeah, it's
even
40 million.
Even to Chile, where I come from.
Well,
Bernardo Higgins is the father of our country.
We did some good work. What I'm saying is that the issue of going abroad to find work is the story of our family, our lives. So there's nothing strange about it.
No, but what I'm fascinated by is that Dr. Gregory has decided that the material he had could speak volumes in a painting.
Well, what we
or
did,
a series.
okay, look, what happened is very simple. You know the big, Fergus McCaffrey and Carolyn produced a big monumental book on me.
Yeah.
I had pictures in it. So I opened up this book in front of him and showed him the pictures. And I said, I can make pictures of your dead. And I can show them in capitals of the world. And their story will be known. And it was as simple as that. Maybe my language wasn't as, the requirements of a lecture room cleans it up an awful lot and makes it tighter. But yeah, that was it.
We're coming up on the hour, and I do want to try and entertain a couple of questions. But before I do, I want to quote back to you something that you said. Well, don't be embarrassed. This was actually quite lovely. You said, and actually you said it in my living room when we were talking, and I was getting my head around the essay that I was going to write for the Hugh Lane book, which by the way we have at the museum. But you said, I often describe drawing as an act of love. You trace your finger over the eyebrow of the beloved as if you were making a drawing. In these works, painting is similar. It's like the application of love to the photograph. Yeah, I mean, I think it deserves taking 2 or 3 beats to consider that idea in its fullness. There are certain things that photographs can do. There are certain ways that photographs work against our attention span, particularly in our digital age. And there are things that paintings in the hands of certain kinds of artists can do to slow down those processes and to make us think or rethink imagery. All right. Anyway,
I was just going to really quickly say a really good example of that is at UN headquarters, the exhibition Brian had there, and we were interviewing various people, UN delegates and whatever in the place afterwards, but many people were really overwhelmed, and they found this pathway into and meaning and emotion that they had never found about these stories through media. And that was in a sense, the perfect example of bringing this to the highest corridors of power and them actually getting a totally different access that actually made them rethink. And I think that's where art has a
in many ways even more powerful than getting, the story or the image in the Washington Post or in the Irish Times I'd love to see if there's some questions in the audience. Before that, I do want to say that I think I speak for the entire staff of the museum in saying that we're tremendously proud to put this show on and to have you guys here. It's been heavy. It's been lovely. Yeah, it's fantastic. We're very, very proud. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, please.
You seem to have experienced people after a violent event, and you represent them. Did you experience any of those events personally?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it would be hard to grow up in the periods I grew up with. I'm 18 and it's 68. Not to have felt the rub of a baton would have been very difficult.
And especially in Ireland in those years.
Yeah. I've been falsely arrested and locked up under all kinds of British rules because of my surname, may I say, of which I'm very proud. It's an ancient name. But yeah. So it's precious little, in other words.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
How were you able to navigate a language barrier?
That's a good one because
This is a constant.
Because I don't even know if he speaks Gaelic as a second language.
It's a constant source of entertainment when we're working together.
don't mind him.
He has the best connection and body language on his honesty with
We
people.
have our hands.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have our face. You know, you can. I've got away with it. I know I couldn't learn another language. I don't have whatever part of the brain that's good with that. I live in France half the year. I still don't speak anything more than what will stop me getting arrested. That's it.
He says gracias for thank you in France.
It's
one example.
You can communicate without the spoken word, I found.
In fact, that the extended captioning barely captures this, but there's some drawings in the show that Brian made in a Sudanese refugee camp.
Yeah.
And he managed to essentially communicate with those folks, and they with him, and to trust him, because the thing about the process, that Brian's engaged in is that it's all about trust. It's all about seeing integrity in this subject and they seeing integrity in you as a subject.
And what's even what you put your finger on, the drawing. People understand drawing. They don't need a language to understand drawing.
But also in the communication, I mean, there's been many tense situations over the years, that we've been in, and just the gesture and the connection and the lack of fear and the acceptance is what really breaks those barriers. It's not the language.
The lack of fear.
When I went into Juarez first, there were these army tenders, and there was also Land Rovers, black Land Rovers. Now these are exactly the same that I'd seen when I was 18, which was 30 years earlier in Belfast. And with pistols, with guns and long rifles and stuff, So it didn't faze me, for Christ's sake. I'd been there before, I mean, maybe I'm stupid, but that was how it felt.
Maybe we'll take another question. Yes, please.
So you were saying you were talking about all your experiences, but can you talk a little bit about the tempo throughout the year of those projects? How do you digest those moments? Is it, of course, during the drawing phase, but is there other moments where you rest from the experiences?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your entire question, but I do have an answer to a piece of it, and that is in the Paris studio, it's 1,000 square foot. It's big, so the pictures are made. The bigger pictures in the show were made there. It's technical. The tears are gone. It's technical. The whole job is technical. Choosing the color, choosing the way to do it, where to put things, what marks to make, when to wash it off, when to leave it there, what to leave. It's all technical. There's no emotion in it at all. It's work. Does that answer you? Thank you. Thank you.
Let's do one more, if there is one more. Yes, please.
I guess maybe it's a follow-up to that. Can you talk about how, the looseness of the paint and specifically, the drip is important to the...
Great question.
I missed the second
The
laugh.
importance of the drip.
The looseness of the paint handling and specifically the drip, the best method of conveying.
Okay.
It's a painter's question, which is great.
Yeah. What I want to do is I want to get the paint to be one surface and not to have one thing on top of another, unless I actually want that or whatever. But the spraying, I don't know, it has, it brings the different colors together. It brings the surface so that there isn't a time. You can't do a time capsule on each of the squares. Do you know what I mean? It should all appear at once. It should hit you with one go, and you look at it and you say, it's one thing.
And there's a haunted, diluted quality to it as well. There's sort of a haunted, diluted quality to it as well. It's sort of washed out color. I mean, you might recognize a certain photographic composition, even without knowing that even without recognizing the photograph, you can often figure out, because of the cropping of an image, that it has a photographic source. But the fact that you let that acrylic sort of do its own thing as paint.
That point there, do its own thing, is important. Somehow or other, I find it objectionable, the artist's hand, unless I need it. Occasionally it's needed.
Before we go, I want you guys to, so these cats, even a couple of hours before we all sort of congregated here and started our jibber jabber, they were with a group of exonerated, recently exonerated prisoners, right? And you guys are already at work locally and then again globally on the next project together. Can you speak to that for a second?
Sure. Well, we've just completed another it's a feature documentary film called Stolen Lives, and if any of you are free tomorrow night, what time is it? 7 o'clock in Stetson Law School, and it's based on Sonny Jacobs, who did 17 years on death row, and Peter Pringle, who did 15 years on death row in Ireland, both of whom were exonerated and both of whom went on to open 2 Sonny centres, one in Ireland and one here in Tampa, which is called the Sonny Living Centre for exonerated prisoners who need a interim place to recover from trauma and reassimilate back into life. But anyway, a short version is we've had meetings with the UN, and we're going to be launching the film hopefully at UN headquarters in New York and at the Palais des Nations in Geneva. And we had the idea then we've worked for many years on this project with some very incredible human beings who have spent, Robert Dubois, who's actually from Tampa, one of the longest incarcerated. A lot of you will be familiar with his story. He did 37 years on death row. So we had the idea of, like our other projects, that Brian would become involved in some way in a wider tour where we can use the film and the art to help in our campaign, which is to bring attention to the death penalty, bring attention to the fact that nearly 99% of all innocents in prison cannot afford a good lawyer and therefore cannot get a fair appeal, and the fact that there's no services available for innocents when they leave prison. All the services for guilty prisoners are not available to innocents. So we met 4 fantastic people today who myself and Dara worked with for a number of years now. It was Brian's first introduction to them, so Brian is now entertaining making paintings of these guys, and we will then use both in our campaign to hopefully tour in partnership with the Innocence Project and other organizations to bring greater attention to these issues.
So again,
4:30.
Right.
4:30 in Stetson Law School. Yeah.
So you heard it here first, right?
You have to RSVP online if you want to go. There's still tickets available. So.
Well, I'm expecting an invitation to the generalist, to the UN viewing. Anyway, listen, I think that's it for us tonight. Obviously, show right over there. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the question. Thank you too. Right. Thank you, Dara.